Georgetown University. The sun is beginning to dip behind the grand Gothic buildings, casting long shadows over the sprawling campus. In the heart of this intellectual hub, a gathering like no other is about to take place. Dr. Adrian Stone, a liberal professor known for his biting sarcasm and provocative lectures, is taking the stage. His reputation precedes him. This isn't just any academic speech. His opinions have stirred controversy before, but today, it's different. Today, it promises to be personal. The lecture hall is filled to capacity, a mix of curious students, journalists, and some familiar faces, those who've long admired Dr. Stone's unfiltered views on American politics. As the professor steps up to the podium, his presence alone sends a ripple of anticipation through the crowd. Everyone knows what's coming. His lectures have never been simple. They're a careful blend of sharp wit, bold ideas, and, at times, scathing critiques. But today, there's a twist no one saw coming. Among the audience is none other than Barron Trump, son of the former First Lady, Melania Trump. The young Trump, no stranger to the limelight, has been quietly observing his father's public life for years. His presence here today, unseen by many, yet crucial to the unfolding drama. He's there with his mother, Melania, a figure who has always carried herself with an air of elegance and mystery. Barron is seated next to her, an unassuming teenager in the sea of academics. Dr. Stone begins his lecture, speaking with his usual confident flair. The subject: the role of women in politics, how public figures are portrayed in the media, and the way they are often reduced to symbols of their husband's success or failures. It's a topic ripe for discussion, but it's clear from the start that Dr. Stone has a specific target in mind. Melania Trump is on his radar. The professor begins to speak of her tenure as First Lady, and her controversial moments. There's no malice in his voice at first, just cold analysis, an attempt to frame Melania as a woman who never truly defined herself beyond her husband's shadow. But then, as he builds to his point, the words grow sharper. More cutting. He mocks her, referencing the infamous moments of Melania's public appearances, her alleged silence on critical issues, and her image as the silent First Lady. The crowd chuckles, some in agreement, some nervously shifting in their seats. But the laughter turns to uneasy murmurs when Dr. Stone begins to draw a line between Melania's perceived passivity and the younger generation's disillusionment with American politics. It's then that the unexpected happens. Barron Trump, who has remained silent throughout the lecture, suddenly stands. The room falls silent. Everyone's eyes are on him, a young man known mostly for his distance from public life. His response: an astonishing, unexpected moment of composure, one that would leave everyone in the room questioning their assumptions. In that single moment, Barron Trump would become the voice of defiance, of wisdom, of something far deeper than anyone had imagined. The professor's mockery falters. The audience holds its breath, waiting for a reply that could either crush or elevate everything that has come before. What does Barron say? What happens next? The stakes are high. The tension, palpable. And in the blink of an eye, a simple lecture has become a battleground of ideas, a clash between the powerful narrative of academia and the quiet strength of a young man who refuses to be a bystander. The tension in the room is palpable, a thick, almost tangible atmosphere of curiosity and unease hanging in the air. Barron Trump stands, his youthful frame casting a shadow in the middle of the lecture hall, as every eye fixes upon him. The professor, Dr. Adrian Stone, pauses mid-sentence, his expression shifting from smug confidence to a flicker of surprise. For a moment, there's only silence. The room waits, caught between the provocation and the reaction that's about to unfold. Barron, who had seemed so quiet, so unassuming, is now the center of attention. His pale blue eyes scan the room, his posture calm, composed, an unexpected strength emanating from the teenager. He clears his throat gently, a small gesture that signals he is about to speak. The audience leans in, unaware that this would not be just a response, but a moment that would change everything. "Professor," Barron's voice cuts through the air, soft yet undeniably firm, "I think you've missed the point." The words are simple, but there's a weight to them that no one expected. Dr. Stone raises an eyebrow, seemingly amused by the young man's audacity. He motions for Barron to continue, a smug smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Oh. And what point, young man, do you think I've missed?" Barron stands taller, his voice gaining strength with each word. "You've made your case against my mother. But what you fail to understand is that you've reduced her to an image that you and others like you have constructed. Not who she truly is." The room stirs with whispered reactions, students exchanging glances. Dr. Stone's expression flickers, but he remains calm, his gaze fixed on Barron. "Ah, the defense of the First Lady, is it? How noble! But surely you can't expect me to take seriously the portrayal of Melania Trump as anything other than a silent, ornamental figure?" A woman who took up the title of First Lady without offering much beyond her husband's success. Isn't that the reality? The provocation is clear, but Barron is unshaken. His gaze never wavers. It's easy to mock someone from the outside. But my mother's strength isn't in being loud or flashy, or in fitting some image you've decided she should conform to. Her strength is quiet, and it's not for you to define. Maybe you don't see it, but that's not her fault. The words hang in the air, and for a moment, even Dr. Stone is speechless. He takes a deep breath, trying to regain control of the situation. You're very protective, I see. But let's talk about reality, Barron. You think your mother didn't know what she was getting into when she stepped into the spotlight? Politics is no place for the quiet. She was part of a system that thrives on attention, on influence, and yes, on speaking up. Your mother's silence, it speaks volumes. Barron shakes his head slightly, as if weighing Dr. Stone's words. His calm demeanor is unnerving. Maybe silence speaks louder than words, Professor, he replies slowly. Maybe the lack of a public persona doesn't mean she has nothing to say. Just because someone doesn't shout doesn't mean they aren't speaking. Dr. Stone, no stranger to being the provocateur, presses on. But why not speak, Barron? Why let someone like her become a figurehead, a shadow of the man in charge? Why let her, your mother, live in that shadow? How is that strength? The tension in the room rises again, the students visibly torn between their admiration for Dr. Stone's intellectual dominance and Barron's quiet, yet resolute defiance. But Barron's next words are so calm, so unexpected, they hit with a force no one saw coming. It's easy to talk about strength when you've never had to be strong in the way my mother has, Barron says, his voice measured but powerful. You don't know what it's like to stand in the shadow of a man who has the entire world's attention, who is relentlessly attacked from all sides, while you're left to watch in silence. You don't know what it's like to live your entire life in the public eye, where every move you make is scrutinized by people like you, who think they know you better than anyone else. The words hit hard, cutting through Dr. Stone's carefully constructed arguments. Barron pauses, letting the room absorb his message before he continues. My mother didn't need to shout to make a difference. She didn't need to be loud. She supported my father in the way she knew how, in the way that worked for her and for our family. And she did it with grace, with dignity, in the face of ridicule. You think you know what strength is, but you've never walked in her shoes. The room is now completely silent. Students exchange looks of disbelief. This wasn't the expected response. This wasn't the argumentative, defiant teenager they thought they knew. This was something else entirely. Dr. Stone, visibly rattled but refusing to back down, scoffs lightly. So, what, Barron? Are you saying that silence, that passivity, is the mark of strength? That my critique is misplaced? I understand defending your mother, but don't you see that I'm critiquing a political system, not the individual? You can't defend everything just because she's your mother. Barron's expression doesn't change. I'm not defending everything. I'm defending the idea that you can't judge someone based on your narrow perception of them. You can't define someone by what they're not. And yes, my mother did things her way, not yours, not anyone else's. And maybe that's why she's stronger than you'll ever understand. There's a beat of silence. Dr. Stone, normally the one to hold the room's attention with a sharp remark or cutting analysis, seems momentarily at a loss. Barron's words have struck deeper than anyone expected. His composed, measured response, though simple, has turned the tables. The lecture has shifted, and suddenly, it's no longer about politics or public personas. It's about the human cost of those judgments, the quiet resilience that often goes unnoticed. And in that moment, Barron Trump, silent, poised, and unexpectedly wise, has completely shifted the narrative. The room is now suffocating in tension, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. The once boisterous energy of the crowd has given way to an eerie stillness. It feels as though the entire lecture hall is holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Dr. Adrian Stone, though a seasoned provocateur, is visibly thrown off by Barron Trump's response. His sharp wit, his ability to twist every word into an intellectual trap, has been upended by the quiet power of a teenager's defense. For the first time, the professor is no longer the one in control. Barron stands there, unwavering. His hands, once stiff at his sides, are now relaxed, his posture even more grounded. His words are deliberate, his tone calm, but it's clear from his eyes, intensely focused, yet devoid of anger, that this confrontation is about more than defending his mother. It's a moment of truth for him, a moment where he is no longer just a bystander in the world of politics and public opinion. Dr. Stone's fingers twitch slightly on the podium, betraying his discomfort. The audience, too, is caught in the web of this unexpected exchange. They are no longer just spectators, they are participants in a battle of ideologies, a test of strength. For a brief moment, the room teeters on the edge of uncertainty. Who will win this intellectual clash? The sharp, seasoned professor or the quiet, resolute young man? Dr. Stone knows that he cannot afford to back down. He's made a name for himself by being bold, by challenging authority and tradition. But Barron's words have made him reconsider. For a fleeting moment, he wonders if perhaps there's more to the Trump family than the caricature he's painted. But pride refuses to let him admit it. He pushes forward, ready to land the final blow. "So, you're saying," Dr. Stone begins, his voice sharp, "that your mother's silence, her refusal to speak out on the issues, is a form of strength? That by not engaging in the conversation, by choosing to remain passive, she is somehow transcending the political circus that surrounds her? That's an interesting take, Barron, but it's also naive." There's a calculated pause as Dr. Stone leans in slightly, sensing the final opportunity to corner the young man. "What you're advocating for is complicity. And I'm not sure your mother would agree with that interpretation of her actions." Barron's expression doesn't change. He's heard this argument before, but this time, it's different. This time, he's ready. With an air of quiet resolve, he responds. "Complicity? No. What my mother did, and what you fail to understand, is make a conscious choice to act in a way that didn't feed into the toxic discourse. You think that speaking out, making waves, or fitting into some mold is the only way to make an impact. But my mother knew better. She knew that sometimes, silence is a louder statement than any words could ever be." Dr. Stone's brow furrows, and for the first time, he's at a loss for words. Barron's response is a revelation, one that contradicts everything the professor has built his arguments on. Silence as power. A conscious decision not to participate in the chaos that defines much of modern politics. And for the first time, the crowd seems to understand what Barron is saying. There's no arrogance in his tone, no defiance for the sake of defiance. Just the clarity of a young man who has observed the world from a vantage point few have experienced. "Do you know what it's like to watch your mother ridiculed every day? To see her portrayed as weak, as an accessory to power?" Barron asks, his voice unwavering. "Do you know what it's like to be part of a family that is constantly under attack, from all sides? You think that's easy to endure? You think you can just stand by and let people tear apart everything your family has worked for? It's not weakness to stand tall in the face of that. It's strength." The professor's face hardens, but for the first time, there's doubt in his eyes. He's not used to being challenged like this, not from a teenager, and certainly not from Barron Trump. The audience, too, seems to shift in their perceptions. What was once a lecture about politics and power dynamics is now a deeply personal confrontation between two vastly different worldviews. But Dr. Stone, ever the intellectual fighter, refuses to back down completely. He's not about to let Barron have the last word. He presses again, his voice steady but tinged with the bitterness of a man who refuses to concede. "So, what? You're telling me that your mother's lack of engagement, her refusal to challenge the political narrative that's been imposed upon her, is somehow a statement of defiance? That's not defiance. That's simply avoiding responsibility." Barron's response is swift and sharp. "You don't understand. My mother didn't avoid responsibility. She took on a role that was never meant for her. She wasn't just a figurehead. She was a mother, a wife, a woman trying to balance everything in a world that was determined to tear her apart. That's responsibility, Professor." And in that moment, Dr. Stone knows. He knows he's lost. He's lost the argument, lost the intellectual high ground, and more importantly, he's lost the narrative he's built for so long. Barron Trump, without raising his voice, without resorting to theatrics or flashy rhetoric, has exposed the limitations of Dr. Stone's arguments. He's revealed the fundamental flaw in the professor's critique, the inability to see beyond the surface, to understand that strength often manifests in ways that are invisible to those looking for spectacle. As the silence in the room deepens, Dr. Stone takes a step back. The fight is over, and Barron has emerged victorious, not through force, but through quiet conviction, a lesson in strength that few in the room could deny. The lecture has shifted from an intellectual debate to something far more personal, and in the end, it is Barron who has taught the greatest lesson of all. In the quiet aftermath of the confrontation, the crowd remains motionless, as if trying to process the weight of what has just unfolded. Barron returns to his seat, his calm expression never wavering. His mother, who has been silently watching the exchange, looks at her son with pride, her silent strength finally recognized. For Barron, this moment marks a turning point in his life. No longer just the son of a controversial figure, he has emerged as someone who can stand on his own, who can speak truth to power without raising his voice. The audience remains stunned, unsure of what to make of the encounter. Dr. Stone's words, once sharp and cutting, now feel hollow. The conversation has shifted. The debate is over. And Barron Trump has shown the world something it never expected, a quiet strength that leaves an indelible mark on everyone present. As the final echoes of Barron Trump's words settle in the lecture hall, a stillness blankets the room. It's a quiet unlike any other, a profound silence that speaks volumes. In that moment, something shifts. The audience, once divided, now shares a common realization. True strength is often found not in the noise of the world, but in the quiet resolve of those who refuse to be defined by the opinions of others. Barron's response wasn't just an argument. It was a lesson, one that transcended politics, one that resonated deeply with anyone who has ever been misunderstood, underestimated, or silenced. Dr. Adrian Stone, once so confident in his intellectual superiority, stands motionless at the podium. His carefully constructed critique has been dismantled by the quiet courage of a teenager. But as much as the professor's ego is bruised, it is impossible to ignore the deeper truth that Barron has revealed. Strength is not always loud. It's not always visible. It often resides in the spaces where others refuse to look. The lecture has ended, but its impact lingers. Students begin to file out, their conversations low but charged with energy. Some discuss the political implications of Barron's words, while others reflect on a more personal revelation. How many times have they allowed others to define them, to box them into a narrow identity based on assumptions or misconceptions? Barron's quiet strength serves as a reminder that they, too, have the power to define themselves, to reject labels, and to stand firm in their own truth. In the days that follow, the story of that lecture becomes a topic of conversation, beyond the walls of the university, beyond the political sphere. News outlets pick it up, social media buzzes with debates, but it is the underlying message that endures. Barron's words become a symbol of resilience, of refusing to conform to the expectations of others, of finding strength in silence and dignity in humility. For Barron, the experience marks a turning point. He is no longer just the son of a controversial figure. He is his own person, with his own voice, and the world is watching. But he does not seem to care. What matters to him is not the applause, nor the attention, but the quiet conviction he has found within himself. He has learned that leadership is not about seeking validation or recognition. It is about standing firm in one's beliefs, even when the world demands conformity. And perhaps that is the most powerful takeaway from this entire encounter. Leadership is not about power or influence. It is about staying true to yourself. It is about knowing your worth, even when the world around you tries to define you in ways that don't align with who you are. Barron's strength wasn't in what he said, it was in how he said it. It was in his unwavering commitment to his family, his beliefs, and his own identity. As the world moves forward, the story of Barron Trump's confrontation with Dr. Stone will not be remembered just as a political debate or a clash between opposing ideologies. It will be remembered as a moment when a young man stood up for his mother, his values, and, ultimately, for himself. A moment that reminded everyone in that room, and everyone who hears this story, that strength comes in many forms, and the quietest voices often have the most power. So, let this be a lesson for all of us. Never underestimate the power of silence. Never assume that someone who chooses not to engage is weak or passive. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than any words could ever do. And when the world tries to define you by its standards, remember that you have the power to choose your own path. You have the ability to stand strong, to be resilient, and to carve out your own space in a world that often seeks to dictate your every move. In the end, Barron's quiet strength has become an inspiration to all who have heard his story. It is a reminder that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it is the stillness in the face of adversity that makes the most lasting impact. So, wherever you find yourself, whether in the face of criticism, adversity, or personal doubt, remember that your strength lies not in fitting into the mold that others expect of you, but in embracing who you truly are. And in that, you will find your greatest power. The world is watching, and your story is waiting to be written.